Greetings. I am your host, Glen Alex, and this is The Glen Alex Show, the 2023 Positive Change Podcast Award winner. Each episode of The Glen Alex Show focuses on a different aspect of health because I believe in total health. You are whole, and all of you matter. And I am on a mission to help you be joyful, connected, confident, and complete the life experience I call wealth, WELLTH, which is health plus other riches. So if more of us were living in total health or even in pursuit of living in total health, then I am firmly believe that the world would be safe, loving, and accepting of all humans. So please join us on this journey and stay tuned for this very helpful episode on yoga for joint pain.
Welcome to the Glen Alex Show, where your health matters, set your mind, let it flow. Joyful, connected, confident, complete. Let Glen Alex help you back on your feet. The Glen Alex
Please help me welcome my guest, Jeff Bailey. As the founder of Avita Yoga, author of The Yoga Mind, and trained rolfer, Jeff Bailey is a catalyst for change and is an expert at restoring joint health. With over 45 years as a yoga teacher, Jeff has a knack for simplifying complex concepts and making them accessible and practical. He has helped thousands overcome pain and return to their favorite activities. Working with Jeff, many have avoided joint replacements because of his time-tested method of repurposing the muscles to cleanse joints and strengthen bones. In a time where muscles and extreme fitness have stolen the show, Jeff brings a revolutionary approach to health that gets to the problem: arthritis, degeneration, and limited mobility. Jeff, welcome to the Glen Alex Show.
Oh, thank you, Glen Alex. Such a joy to be here.
Oh my goodness, I'm looking forward to learning more about Avita Yoga and how that can help with joint pain and joint health. So let's start with you just telling us what led you into this work.
Yeah, well, I feel like in many ways my training started in my childhood. My dad was a veterinarian, and I had my hands in everything, assisting him through up into my teens. And he quizzed me about physiology and anatomy. He just loved to teach me the stuff, and I loved to learn it. But then instead of going into medicine, I discovered a yoga class in my college years, and uh, it just captivated me. And I kind of switched from going into medicine to just pursuing this uncharted territory, certainly at the time in the early 80s, this thing called yoga. And it was the best decision I ever made. I feel like it has opened my heart, opened my mind, and through a couple injuries, there may be injuries, but there are no accidents, because if we really tune in to what the universe sends us, even things we may not like, there's a gift in them. And two major injuries. The first one put me into the world of rolfing. I became a rolfer, which is a form of body work, deep structural body work. And then a second one was a ski accident to my hip that led to the discovery of the fact that joints love pressure. We just have to learn how to give it to them to create healing.
Okay, okay. And so when did you develop Avita Yoga?
It's been about a little over 10 years now, more like 12 years. I, I I had a yoga studio. It was inspired to open this studio, which was never really in the cards. I liked writing about yoga. I liked teaching it, but my wife was kind of the catalyst that moved us into a studio, and I had this space. And then the hip injury that thought for sure I was going to end up getting a replacement. This happened when I was 50 years old, and kind of a turning point, certainly a turning point in my life. Sometimes that age is a turning point in other people's lives where something comes in and puts us in a new direction. And everything that I was doing to mend my hip, doctors told me it was just a matter of years before I'd need a replacement. I felt way too young and it just wasn't going to happen to me. So I dug deep and one day in a yoga class, I was sitting a little bit like I'm sitting now and curved forward, and this pressure went into my hip, right into the painful area. And instead of pulling out of it, I just said, whoa, wait a minute, there's something to this. And I stayed. And a little while later, I got up and it felt better. And so I just started experimenting by giving the joints pressure. I started to clean up an arthritic problem in my knee. My shoulder started to improve from years of racket sports in my youth. And um, it's amazing what can happen when we give our joints the same pressure that we know our bones love.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me just speak to something you've already mentioned, a very powerful point that I think is worthy of repeating is sometimes we humans think that negative events mean the end of the world or something's wrong with us and all this other stuff that can be depressing and debilitating. Yet I do agree with you that there's that proverbial silver lining. There's always a blessing that comes out of some kind of pain or trauma. So thank you for mentioning that.
Hmm.
Now, as you went through your healing journey, how long did it take you to actually formulate, crystallize Avita?
It took I would say probably a year,
Okay.
but it's still to this day, I'm discovering new shapes because unlike yoga that goes for poses and a strength and stretch approach where we're constantly trying to attain a certain pose with the idea that everything was going to be silver and gold once we got to that special place in a pose. And I'd seen that not occurring for myself and many others. It's kind of like searching for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And so when I shifted completely away from that, I had questioned it for many years, but when I shifted completely away from that and just went for the bones, because I had nothing to lose, uh, that's when the light just started going on in my
Okay.
heart, left and right, and started. I was already teaching classes at my studio, and so I just started shifting my approach, and lo and behold, this thing was born.
Okay. Okay. Congratulations. Now, you've mentioned joints love compression. Is the shapes are the shapes that you attain in the Vita yoga, do they have a similar effect as like compression stockings, or is that a whole different
Mm.
process?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. No, it's completely different than that. Compression stockings will help kind of push fluid through tissues. But Glen Alex, there is one similarity, and that is, you know, in the book that's coming out in about a month, I dedicate a chapter so that people can really understand the physiology, because your question is a physiological question.
Mhm.
What makes this work? Very quickly, the articulating joints, the major movers, your fingers, your knees, your shoulders, they all have a capsule that encapsulates the fluid within. It also helps
Mhm.
give the joint some integrity, but there's synovial fluid.
Yes.
And the pressure and the compression that we put on our joints moves the fluid through the synovial membrane where it's picked up and cleansed. We got to get the toxins out. In
Okay.
my mind, arthritis is nothing more than a toxic environment. All the other reasons we look for online and search for and what doctors tell us, like, oh, it's because of wear and tear, it's because of overuse, it's because of this, because of that. No, none of those add up. And the one thing that is consistent across all cases of immobility and pain is we're just not giving our joints the compression they need to move the toxins out. And the moment the void is detected inside the joint, the synovial membrane produces fresh new fluid.
Okay. No, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stop you. That was I'm just
Yeah,
listening.
there's one more piece to it. So there's the cleansing of the fluid inside, which is a little bit like wearing a stocking. But the other piece of it is the compression that goes into the cartilage and the bones stimulates a medical, well, it stimulates a process called remodeling, which is a medical term. And so the compression starts to literally reshape the surfaces and make them stronger and healthy and denser as well. So it's it just works when we stimulate that physiology. But the problem is, we're afraid of the pain. We've been trained to
Mm,
not give our joints the pressure because we get a little sensitivity there and then we think, oh no, we gotta stay out of there. And
right.
so it's not just what we do, it's how we do it that makes Avita effective.
Okay. Okay. Well, I was visualizing the joint as you were describing the physiology of it. So
Cool.
yeah, it's very cool. I'm very visual. So when you talk about remodeling, I just want the audience to be aware that remodeling is the last phase of the physiology of healing, right?
Well, it happens simultaneously, but it needs
Okay.
to happen consistently.
Okay.
Like a bunion is on our big toe is nothing more than some alignment issue, like a, a strain or sprain to the ligaments in the foot. Something is pushing pressure down and in through the big toe, and that pressure makes bone form.
Okay.
Happens in like a dowager's hump, and it happens around the gums when we clench our teeth. Bone just forms where there's pressure.
Mm,
Where there's not pressure, it gets soft and weak. We all know that. So, so now when we start to work through the restrictions around a joint, not talking about stretching, I'm talking about addressing the fascia around the joint, which is a malleable, adaptable, changeable tissue. When we work with and through that, all along the way, we're putting the pressure that cleanses the joint simultaneously with the pressure that starts to mend and remodel the joint.
okay.
You just do it once, or even maybe, I've seen students get results with once a week. But we gotta come back to it a few times a week to really keep the progress happening and going.
Okay. Okay. And so in the process of applying the proper pressure through shapes, describe the difference between joint pain and healing pain.
Excellent question. So glad you asked that. Yeah, that's the one skill we learn in Avita Yoga. We're not practicing Avita to get better and to accomplish it or anything like that. We want results. Usually at some point in our life, we just like, hey, I want to do something that makes me feel better, period. I don't care what I look like compared to the other people in the room. So most of the yoga we do in Avita is even with our eyes closed because it's a very inner process. We close our eyes, we go inside, we experience the shape, and the
Mm,
one skill, the only thing we get better at is discerning the difference between pain that could pull us out, cause fear, cause strain, cause stress, and healing sensation that actually brings peace of mind.
mm,
It just feels really good, even though initially it might be a little bit uncomfortable. And even to this day, I'm still, when I come into my own practice, I'm just like any other student. My eyes are closed and I'm assessing, assessing, assessing because the activity I did yesterday or what I had for lunch or the thoughts that I had watching the news or whatever, those things all affect the body. And so every day
Hmm.
we have to come to it with a fresh perspective.
Absolutely. And as you were describing the healing sensation, that sounds very meditative to me. And it also sounds like a great way to reconnect with self.
You said it. Yeah, there's nothing more I can add to that, Glen Alex. That's beautiful. In fact, in the book, in the opening chapter, I say the primary goal of this practice is inner peace. It may
Mhm.
be a shoulder, a knee, or a hip issue that brings you to it, but you gently say to yourself, inner peace is what I really want above all else. And with that gentle goal, it doesn't mean we have to be perfect at it right away. It's just a goal. And we plant that seed. And then that seed and that goal becomes our guiding light along the way because we can tell, oh, not peaceful here. I'm getting aggressive, or, I'm pushing too hard, or I'm not present with myself, something like that. And then you go, oh, yeah, let me come back to here and now. Listen, wait, judge not. And that's how miracles come through. That's how good things happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just be. Just
Just
be.
be. Yeah.
Now, does the cause of the joint pain impact the effect of Avita Yoga? If it's pain from external trauma or a break, a bone break, or a health
Yeah.
condition?
Yeah. That's another good question. When This is something I learned in Rolfing School, which was the best yoga teacher training I'd ever had. Uh, we learned that the pain and the problem are usually in two different places. When
Mm,
it comes to chronic long-term pain. See, now that's true whether I had a knee injury, a hip injury somewhere in the past.
okay.
It's also true if I just had some form of emotional abuse or
Mm,
some sort of traumatic event in my life. The body never forgets. And in a way, the body keeps trying to heal and lay down scar tissue sometimes and tension is just a splinting response of muscles to try to protect. And it works very well in the short term when there's an acute injury. But if we don't sort of flush out the effects of the trauma soon after the acute stage is over, then it just begins to accumulate. And so Avita Yoga addresses chronic situations. And
okay.
in many ways, we don't make a distinction. I mean, I'll talk about restrictions in the body mostly, but then the other restrictions that we might have in the form of fear or guilt or anxiety, those kinds of things, they just will come up to the surface. And uh, that's all we need to do is let them up. And sometimes we shed a tear, or we we might we could have any number of emotional responses, and we just let them up. I get those kind of stories a lot in the practice, and
Okay.
I just leave. I let love itself take care of those. We don't try to analyze or fix those kind of things.
Okay. So Avita Yoga restores joint health. It cleanses joints and it releases, sounds like some old mental and emotional junk.
Yes, yeah. It sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It's but that's why I wrote the book. I mean, it's been 5 years in the making, and it's why I practice every day. Not, I mean, I practice the spiritual, the mental practice every day, and there's rarely a day that goes by where I don't give a few of my joints some compression. But I have a consistent practice that I share with people online. I do that 4 times a week.
Okay.
But it Oh, it's just such a beautiful practice. It really it's a paradigm shift. It's something very new to the world, I think, and I hope it catches on because it really works.
Okay. And it sounds great. I'm ready to go change my clothes and get ready. Um,
Yeah, let's do it.
unfortunately, I can't do that right now. It'd be a little unprofessional. So how about if you give us a demonstration?
Yeah, sure. I'll share a shape. So we don't do poses, we have shapes. And here's a shape called Sukhasana. And it doesn't have to have a fancy name, but see, most of the time when people sit on the floor, they pull their feet in close.
Okay.
And I was doing this in the yoga class that I mentioned, and it was my left hip that had a severe high-speed incident. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, you're fine.
So I'm sitting like this, and one of the shapes that often, well, not that often come through, it's kind of a shape that we see in the world of yin, but they bring the legs out and almost stack them like this. And so I've come to use the terminology where we bring the leg closest. See, my right leg's in front, the left leg goes forward, so it's parallel to the wall in front of me.
Okay. Okay.
And that movement alone, if I'm in a classroom, I'll grab people's toes and I'll kind of pull them away and wide.
Okay.
They almost immediately want to scoot forward with it because it starts to put pressure into the hips. And when you bring them out like this, often the knees will lift because of the restriction. See, now the hip is a ball and socket joint.
Mm-hmm.
When we walk, it just moves back and forth like this, but it's designed to move in lots of ways. So that's what makes this shape one of the more potent shapes. I'll just say that it, when I began, I could barely sit on the floor like this. So we often elevate. You could even lean back against the wall. We have to find the proper entry point into the restricted area.
Okay.
It's key because if you can't sit on the floor and you push on it and it's too painful, you say, "Oh, it's not for me," and you'll never come back to it. So we that's what our Avita teachers are trained to do is help people find the entry point where it can begin to be effective. And if the restriction is strong here, there's no need to advance the shape. But the way we do advance it, bit by bit over time, letting gravity have the legs, the knees drop, we slowly curve. The
Mm.
entire spine is meant to curve. Okay, so we don't do any of this flat back stuff. Well, we will because the spine goes this way too, but I'm getting into other shapes. So we encourage flexion on the hips, flexion of the spine, let everything curve. And with time and practice, the shape starts to change. And and this is exactly the time when I have to remind most people of the goal because they'll start to say, I can't, or that doesn't feel right, or something like that. And I'll ask some questions to get clarity on what they're feeling to ensure that it's healing sensation, because we kind of need some of that feedback in the beginning. But we have to be reminded of the goal. And what is the goal? Peace and results. Okay. We need not advance the shape. What I say to students a lot is advances in the shape will come as pleasant surprises. once in a class, after a class, a student came up to me afterwards and said, I thought you bumped into me. And I said, really, why? She said, no, my head touched the floor. And she had been a student of mine for several years. And that's how long it took her to curve forward. And
Okay.
when her head touched the floor, she was startled. And that's when I got this idea. Okay, our shapes advance as pleasant surprises, but along the way, we got to be walking better, we got to be sleeping better, we got to be
Mhm.
spending time with doing activities with people we love. We just got to be having those kinds of results.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that demonstration. That was very interesting. Now, how do you incorporate breath work in the shapes?
Yeah, there's so many ideas and about there out there about breath. And because our bodies are so complex, unbelievably complex. And then when you layer in the ramifications of chronic injury and emotional and psychological events that have ill effects on us, you layer all that in, you have even more complexity. So we so what I'll say is in a classroom is the sensation that we work with. Well, I'll say, what sensation do we work with first? The answer is the first sensation that shows up. Because for some, it could be in the knee in that shape. While it
Okay,
is targeting the hips, it could be in the ankle.
okay,
So, okay, there it is. Tell me what it feels like. Let's just work with that. So we have to find the simplest ways into the complexities of the body. That's why, one reason why we practice unregulating. Let me say that again. We practice without regulating the breath.
okay,
Every once in a while, I'll encourage somebody to take an expansive breath just to feel the ribs move. But there's only one thing that I'll remind people to do, and that is to breathe through the nose, have a little relaxation of the jaw so the teeth aren't clenched, and just have the lips together. That's the only cue I really give
okay,
often about the breath.
okay. And then that allows their breath, them to breathe naturally according to what their body needs at that moment in the shape.
It allows us to not have to think about managing the breath.
Okay,
It's managed by the autonomic nervous system. It'll take care of itself.
okay,
So I want my mind and every student in the room, I want their mind on the sensation. And because that sensation is what inspires a sense of lasting peace, which becomes the goal of the practice. It becomes goal and guide for the practice.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We keep it simple.
Very, keep it
Yeah.
simple. Very good, very good. Now, you do offer classes online, you said, 4 times a week? Or is that open to the public, or is it, how does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. AvitaYogaOnline.com. I sold my studio of about 10 years in 2022. So I had Yoga Loft in Boulder, Colorado for 10 years. Beautiful location. It was my training ground for all this and had enormous success there. But I got to this point soon after my wife retired from dentistry where it just was time for me to move on. And so I sold the studio. It gave me time to write the book, and
Mhm.
I took everything online. And it was just really inspired, as hard as it was. There were a lot of students that I felt like I was kind of letting down, but it had to happen. And so many of them joined me online.
Okay.
And that's where I teach 3 to 4 classes per week. But there are these replays that I've formed into
Mhm.
playlists. And so I encourage all new students to come and practice playlist number, or it's a series number 1.0. And that's where it's 14 classes where you learn all the basics, and then you can start moving through the various series. And in a way, there's a lifetime of work because every class is different. Instead of targeting muscles, we target joints, and that leads to an endless amount of creativity. And what's really cool about that is that as a student, you never know what shape is coming next.
Mm.
That naturally encourages us to stay in the present moment where all healing occurs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now, your courses are on avitayoga.org or .com?
AvitaYogaOnline.com.
Okay. And when will the book be released?
The book will be released August 5th. And what I'm what's super cool right now, we got about a month and a half for that. I'm not sure exactly when this will be released, but it'll be released before the book, I'm sure. And so if you pre-order the book before August 5th, then you get these awesome bonuses. You get a free 75-minute class with me that I taught it in a way so you could do it in 20-minute chunks if you want to just sort of tiptoe into it. There's an interview, kind of like the one we're doing now, but it's in person, where I talk about the importance of knowing your constitution, which is an
Okay.
interesting concept. We're we're born on a continuum. Some are flexible, some are stiff, and some kind of land,
And
fortunately, right in the middle. But if we try to be something we're not, we we get injured, we bump up against the resistance, and we get disenchanted. So it's kind of cool to understand your constitution. It's in the book. There's a chapter in the book on that, but the interview is helpful too. And of
okay.
course, you also get the manuscript by pre-ordering it. It's
Okay.
$31, which includes shipping. You get all those bonuses.
Okay. And you can pre-order on your website.
Hmm. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. This has been absolutely fascinating for me. I am going to follow up
Yeah.
because it sounds very helpful and exciting. And I love the mind-body connection component to it for sure. So
Thank
I know yoga is a huge endeavor in terms of concepts and meaning and benefits. However, can you sum it all up into one nugget? What is the one takeaway you want the audience to have?
Well, we kind of hit on it earlier, Glen Alex. I think the number one thing is to not be afraid of the pain. And no matter whether it's a joint pain or emotional pain or some sort of traumatic pain, you close your eyes and ask love for help. That's how this all came to me. And you ask it, or you could say, I'm going to ask the universe for help. And you just mean it sincerely. And then be patient, but watch with your eyes and listen with your heart and wait for the signs and symbols to come in. And then when they come in, you got to go, oh, wait a minute, this is the answer I was looking for. And then you trust and follow it. That's the key. And I think that's if we all have a healing story that was inspired by some form of that, and then when we have our healing story, then we can go out and help others and reinforce our own healing. And I think that's how we heal the world.
Hmm. Okay, one joint at a time.
Yeah. One heart at a time, one mind at a time, one joint at a time. Yeah. I love it.
I love it too. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate your time, your energy, your expertise, and your work, and
Mm.
your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Glen Alex. Thank you for having me on your show.
You're very welcome. Thank you again for tuning into this episode of The Glen Alex Show. We hope you learned a little bit more about joint pain today and the alternative method of Avita Yoga for managing. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode.
Refresh your spirit with a nourishing thought.
Please allow me to leave you with this nourishing thought. Author Amit Ray said, yoga is the process of eliminating pain. Today's episode was on joint pain, which has a number of causes, including injury, arthritis, and chronic conditions. Joint pain can be mild to severe and can be felt in all joints throughout the body. Pain in the joints restricts movement, inhibits ability to do tasks, and diminishes quality of life. The treatments for joint pain vary, including at-home remedy, medication, analgesics, weight loss, and surgery. There is no one-size-fits-all treatment for joint pain, chronic pain, or healing in general. So explore all options to find the best fit for you. Please be proactive with your provider about your specific needs and uniqueness. And I strongly encourage you to incorporate your inner wisdom in your healing process. Yoga is also considered a viable treatment for joint pain by Johns Hopkins, BlackDoctor.org, the Arthritis Foundation, and others. And today's guest, Jeff Bailey, believes that his Avita Yoga can restore joint health and improve your quality of life and overall well-being. Other benefits of yoga include reduced pain, improved physical functioning, improved circulation, improved flexibility, and enhanced body-mind connection. And yoga is one of my favorite ways to manage anxiety. To learn more about your well-being, visit glenalex.com, order your copy of my 3-time award-winning book, Living in Total Health, order your copy of the Amazon bestseller, Wellness Through Words, that has my chapter, Living Well with Boundaries, in it. Then book your complimentary consultation with me to address your health and wellness needs. Then tune in to the next episode of The Glen Alex Show. And until next time, be well.